You wore one too.
Hi, Ashley, you're live. Hi, Michael.
Hi,
We're live.
Michael Barron, producer, artistic director, and tonight I'm in the green tunic. But we've inspired even Ashley.
Look at that.
Or desert
Spin. Desert.
But we were here for our pre-show talks with two wonderful people. I'd like to introduce first Rabbi Jacobson from Emanuel Synagogue,
Yes,
and
hello.
Pastor Carl Anderson from Church of the
Hi,
Servant.
guys.
Hello. And here together. This is our second night of the show.
Yeah.
We have a wonderful Q&A and conversation out here. Less Q&A, just us. And then we take a break, and then the show starts. But last night was amazing. The show runs through Sunday. Check it out. And let's go.
All right.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, Mickey. Very good pack.
Yep. Hi, April.
And this is the lowest stress thing ever. So Kyle, let's go for it. Whenever you're ready. I'm introducing you. Yeah.
Yep.
Please give us your attention. That's it. Please give us your attention as we welcome to the stage producing artistic director Michael Barron.
In collaboration between the two faiths and the two congregations. And then I met with both of them and said, hey, I'm doing Joseph in the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat next summer, which is a musical that it's in the canon, and if you do family-friendly material like Lyric does every summer, at least once, you're going to do Joseph. And the last production of Joseph that everyone kind of knows starred Donny Osmond, told and used as lessons for children very differently than for adults. I also felt that religion sometimes is a great divider in our community, and I wanted to bring us together to see in what ways that we actually have things in common, and Joseph is one of those stories for the Bible. Cut to, I had to be a part of this project and can talk to our audiences before the show. I have pre-planned questions, but really this is a free-for-all conversation, and if there's time, we might have questions from you guys, but I don't know if there will be. I do want to give a quick bio of each of our guests, but it's more complete. So, Rabbi Jacobson was born on a cattle ranch in Central Florida, outside the small town of Davenport. At the last census, there were 1,200 people and 8,000 head of cattle in Davenport. She attended the George Washington University, graduating with a bachelor's degree in international relations, concentration in Middle Eastern studies. Then, never having left the East Coast of the United States, she got a passport and moved to Jerusalem, Israel, to attend the conservative yeshiva for 2 years. A yeshiva is a traditional, non-degree Jewish learning center, and Rabbi Jacobson learned Jewish texts there for the pure love of Jewish learning. She received her rabbinic ordination, along with a master's degree in Hebrew letters from the Jewish Theological Seminary of America in New York City back in 2009. She has been the rabbi of Emanuel Synagogue since then. She's also the former president and longtime board member of the Interfaith Alliance of Oklahoma. I pulled this off the internet, Pastor Kyle. It must be true then. It is, right? Pastor Kyle Anderson graduated OCU and then received his Master's of Divinity degree from St. Paul's School of Theology. He's currently completing his MBA through Dakota Wesleyan University. His first pastoral appointment came at the age of 23 when he was appointed to the United Methodist Churches in Manchester and Wakita, right, Oklahoma. She's like, hear that town on the
Twister.
In Twister, that's right. Where he likes to say his true pastoral education took place. For the previous 13 years, he served at First United Methodist Church in Stillwater, 8 years as an associate, and in the past 5 years, which I guess was a year ago, as senior pastor. Because currently, you're the senior pastor at Church of the Servant. How long have you been at Church of the Servant?
This Sunday will mark a year, so excited.
Well, welcome back to Oklahoma. It was so exciting to meet you, and welcome. And I will say, when I first got to Oklahoma, I'm also from Central Florida, Orlando, and we spoke, and the Jewish community is not that big in the United States. And she said, oh, I have an aunt that lived in Orlando and was an English teacher. And I said, that wouldn't be Mrs. Wiener, would it? And she said, yes. And her aunt was my English teacher in high school and my advisor for student government, and wrote every one of my recommendations for college and was the largest influence in my life. And so to have her here is just very special.
And she's still super proud of you.
Well, I am super thankful for her. So that's a little bit about us. The last thing I'll say about this production is that instead of doing the Donny Osmond Vegas version, I wanted to go back to biblical study and also storytelling and where do people come together to tell stories. I went to Camp Weewop in Apopka, Florida as a camper. It was a Christian camp, but I was a Jew. There were people of any faith there. We woke up every morning with St. Father Abraham. But in the evenings, we also gathered around the fire to tell wonderful stories. Some of them from the Bible, some of them Native American stories, some of them we just made up. But it was my greatest memories growing up were that summer camp when the outside world went away and kids were allowed to be kids and adults were just free to relax and form this wonderful community. So I tried to create that on stage tonight. You'll see 72 children in the show that are divided into 4 cabins. The cabins are named after the first 4 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. You won't hear this in the show, but just in your mind, you go, oh, interesting. So there's cabin Aleph, Bet, Gimel, and Dalet. And after that, we're just doing Joseph. But it was sort of a way to frame this show in a more sincere and honest way, because after all, it's a Bible story, and I think whether you're atheist or have a religious faith, these stories have been around a long time for a reason. So with that, my first question is for Pastor Carl Anderson, and what draws you to the story, and also what lessons do you feel when you use the story in your at your church? Does it teach children, adults? What draws you to it?
First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity that you're providing to us and a number of other faith communities throughout Oklahoma City. For me, what I think about with this story is I think it demonstrates for us what happens both when you think selfishly and also when you think externally about others. As you think about the story, and as we'll hear again tonight, and as you think about the scriptures, you know, the brothers, they're envious, right? It comes from pride, it comes from themselves. They're upset with their brother, and so they want to, kill him or, sell him off. And then think about Potiphar's wife. She, has PG, so she has desires for Joseph. But when that doesn't happen, we see the lengths she'll go to get what she wants selfishly, and then we'll see how she will destroy his life to get what she wants. Think about the cupbearer, who Joseph interprets his dream and says, "Now don't forget me." And then what does he promptly do once he's restored to Pharaoh's side? He forgets him for like 2 years until, oh yeah, there's this guy back in prison that might be able to help you. And so we see just constantly throughout the story people, harming ultimately themselves, but others just through their selfish actions. And I would even posit that Joseph, I think, correct me, 17, I think, when the story starts. So he's either extremely naive, or there's something wrong with him when he's saying, "Hey, brothers and dad, I had this dream where I had this, my wheat was all put together, and it was really tall and just big, and then all your, sheaves of wheat all bowed down to mine. What do you think that means?" And I'm thinking to myself again, he's either completely naive or, he's thinking a bit selfishly about himself, right? And so I'm not going to say that Joseph is his actions lead to what happens to him, but he also didn't help the situation any. But then we look at the opposite. What are all the times when people start to think about others? So think about when Joseph, when he is there and he's with Potiphar, and he has every reason to hey, I'm going to chase after your wife. I'm going to just look after me. But instead, he tries to help them out, and he flourishes their household. He helps Pharaoh later on. And what does that do? It helps the entire country of Egypt, and it also helps out other countries who come to them in the time of famine. Because again, he's thinking not about how do I serve me, but how do I serve others? And ultimately, he helps serve his family, who benefits when they think of others. And even his brothers, I think there's some redemption when they stop thinking about themselves. They see how hungry they are, their father is, their family is, and they say, we got to push out our pride. We got to go see if there's somewhere we can get some help. And so they benefit when they start thinking about other than themselves, and they benefit from Joseph, who helps care for them. So that's a lot. That's kind of my overall, I think, a lot of application from Joseph's story that we can apply to our lives as well.
Well, it's funny because as you're speaking, the lyrics of the show are going through my head. It's like, oh, what he's saying somehow Tim Rex and Angela Weber put into a song, made a country country song or made it an Elvis number. Some of the rhyming is, last night we had lots of laughter. Some of the rhymes about what you're saying are clever, but exactly the story you're saying. And I think the message, what I've tried to do with this production is get to those messages as stopping points throughout the show so it doesn't keep coming at you as the musical sometimes often does. So Rabbi Jacobson, as a Jewish leader, and I'm Jewish, I must tell you when I talked to the pastor at Crossings, he said to me, well, you know, we also teach about the other Joseph. And I'm like, what other Joseph? And he goes, Mary's Joseph? I went, oh, right. There's another Joseph. That is in the New Testament, which I don't really know. Because we study the Torah and the Holy Scriptures. But that being said, I do know Joseph very well because of a cycle that Jews study the Torah in. So maybe you could tell a little bit about the yearly cycle of our learning and how Joseph fits in and anything else.
Absolutely. So the Torah, Genesis through Deuteronomy, is broken into weekly portions and read weekly unless there's a holiday that interrupts the cycle. So that in a super traditional congregation, you'll read the entire 5 books of Moses every year. In a slightly less traditional congregation, you read a small excerpt from each one, or a third of each one, so that in 3 years, you've read the whole cycle. Obviously, at the end of Genesis, so we restart at the end of our fall holiday season, so this ends up being late fall, early winter sort of thing. And it's something that we then are reading liturgically in the congregation on Saturdays once a year. For me, the way this strikes me is as a transition point. A real point, not even a transition, but an inflection. So, up till now, Jews have been a tiny family. There's been Abraham and Sarah and some of their kids, but not all of them, and some of their grandkids, but not all of them, and then Jacob and his kids and his wives. They'll go 70 in number into Egypt. The whole Jewish community in the world, kind of like the Jewish community of Oklahoma City, will number 70 people. And when they come out of Egypt in the book of Exodus, they'll be a nation, not just some guy and his God and his family. As part of that turning point, it's also an inflection of how religion works. Up until now, it's been one guy. You only have room for one. So sorry, Abraham, who had 2 sons. One of them is going to be the patriarch. The rest of them don't get to go on. Sorry, Isaac, you had twins. One gets to go on, and the other one, we have no blessing for.
Go on where?
You get to be the patriarch, the head of the religion for the next generation. Jacob now has 12 sons. And each of them, when auditioning to be the new patriarch, is terrible at it. Reuben, firstborn, has an indiscretion with his stepmom. Let's not have him. Joseph, firstborn of his mom, and the whole Joseph cycle, he isn't a great patriarch. Everything that is needed to make a patriarch, Joseph gets. He's preferred. He has the fancy clothing. He has the prophetic dreams. He has the love and commitment of his parents, and yet he's gonna make a lousy patriarch. He isn't going to do the right thing. And in telling the story, many of Jacob's sons rises to the occasion so that we know going forward this isn't going to be a religion run by one patriarch in the future. It's going to be something that's done collectively. That's going to be done initially by 12 tribes. And after that is going to be something that's done corporately, that's done in a big group. That's a big change. Lots of other big changes too. There are lots of other moments where when you think something different happens to teach you something. Judah is a great example. Judah is not coming out well in this story up until the end. He is not going to be the patriarch, even though Shimon and Levi Simeon and Levi have murdered people, so probably not them. Reuben, we already said not him. Judah's number 4, so maybe Judah would be okay. But Judah comes out of the story very poorly. Judah does not save Joseph, and then Judah has this whole misadventure, mishandling his children and their marriages. And then, at the end of the story, Judah is the one. They've gone to Egypt. Joseph is messing with them, which is, I think, by hands down the best part of the Bible. Joseph messing with his brothers is the best ever. And one of them's in jail. Benjamin's at home. They're still starving. They show back up. Reuben says, like the big leader that he is, if I don't bring back precious Benjamin to you, you can murder my children. Well, that's the wrong thing to say. That's not going to help. Judah is the one who says, I will be sinning against God if I do not bring the child back to you. It will be upon my head the responsibility to bring him back to you. And he says that to Pharaoh too. I will not be responsible for not bringing back the boy. And suddenly, he's a leader in a way that he couldn't have been before. The brothers, not knowing that Joseph is listening, saying God is punishing us because of what we did to our brother Joseph, what terrible thing we did, their hearts have changed. And the very end, as the Jewish people, remember, tiny minority just like you, Jewish people are being resettled into Egypt. They've listened to Joseph, who is the only person who can look at Pharaoh and tell him, you're not a god, you're just a dude, and you're a dude who needs to start saving. And there's a solution, and you've got to get on top of it. And he can talk to him like that because he's the only one in the room who doesn't think Pharaoh is divine.
Saving what?
The only one who can interpret his dream and say, Pharaoh, you have to take responsibility, you have to save, you have to think about everybody else's needs, and you have to really govern the country in a way that's going to get us through this famine, which is not a way Pharaoh has thought before. And now, we get to the very end of the story. The Jews are settled in Goshen, part of Egypt. And aged, elderly Jacob, reunited with all of his children, is brought to meet the Pharaoh. And he blesses the Pharaoh before leaving. Pharaoh, who has never had positive interactions with male relatives. You can't. There's a lot of murder at the Pharaonic court. He didn't get to that position happily. And he's very young. He's a very young Pharaoh. He treats Joseph like a father figure. And Joseph, as you said, Pastor, was very young when this episode started. So what business does he have treating a 20, 30-year-old like a father? He must be very young. And aged Jacob comes in and has the temerity to walk up to the man God on earth, son of the sun god Ra, and bless him. It's amazing, amazing, amazing inflection point after inflection point after inflection point to wrap up the story to prepare us then to come out of Egypt 400 years later as a nation that God has rescued.
That was incredible. I feel like I should have talked to you before we started rehearsal about the story. What you're going to see is a simplified version made for children. It doesn't mean you shouldn't think about what the rabbi has shared with us at all. As she was speaking, I'm trying to think in our production, what of those inflection points actually occur, which don't. And a lot of them cleverly do. Even Judah, who, when you do a musical, you have a cast of characters, you have a chorus of guys, and this you have the chorus of brothers. You get to know them a little bit, not nearly as well as we know them now. But he's got the last song. That, of course, is a crazy Caribbean calypso. But the sentiment is the same. I do think I might tell Jacob backstage when he comes back to Egypt in the show, he should probably bless the Pharaoh on the stage. However, the Pharaoh is also one of the brothers because we have to double cast in the theater, so the Pharaoh isn't in that scene. But it's fascinating. And I will say, talking with each religious leader, having an adult perspective on these stories not only in the politics and how families worked then and today has been fascinating. I'll just share really quickly. As actors, I wanted this story. The musical was originally written in 1968. It was the first musical by Angela Weber and Tim Rice. They wrote it as a 23-minute cantata, which is a musical concert for an Episcopal boys' school in England. Several years later, they made a recording of it. It was the first recording of Joseph. It's about 40 minutes, and it sounds like the Beatles and a rock album, and it's definitely a precursor to their next show, Jesus Christ Superstar. And then several years after that, there's sort of the version that you see tonight, which is a very pop music version that mixes the children and the adults together. But as modern actors, since the story was written for boys initially, there's a whole cast of women on stage, and I wanted to find out the names of the wives in the story. Who here knows the names of the wives of the brothers? Hopefully nobody. Because I went online and I typed it in and I got this list of wives' names. And I went to the professor, Lisa Welch, she's our guest Friday night. But I said, Professor, I found the names of the wives. And her specialty is women in the Bible. And she said, you're the first, what are you talking about? And I said, well, it was on the internet, it must be true. But it turns out she did a long deep dive, and it was in the book of Jubilees, which is not a book in the Bible. Christians and Jews, there's a whole bunch of books that they decided was not part of the canon. And then it made sense because all the names were Greek in nature. The other little fact I'll say from another faith tradition is when I met with Dr. Chauncey, who's the imam, the head of the Muslim community here. And the story of Joseph is the only story in the Quran that is told in full chronologically. The whole Quran, from what I understand, is Muhammad sharing his thoughts about the Bible and his experience, but it's the only story that's told chronologically, so it's extremely important as well in the Muslim faith. Back to you, Pastor. What are your hopes for the religious community in Oklahoma? Having lived here, went away, come back, our city is changing in so many wonderful ways, but I still think that it's a challenging time. But what is your hope?
Well, my hope would be, I think what tonight is illustrating, this opportunity, instead of, more so often we might focus in upon and hear reported, disagreements, division, things of that nature, divisiveness that happens between Christian denominations, between faith traditions, and I think when the vast majority of the time is, well, no, we want to work together. We like working together. We enjoy conversing, learning from each other. And so I think, I hope, I don't know how many other productions you can do this for, but I hope that anytime you have that chance like this or other ways throughout Oklahoma City, is where can we have those conversations, where can we celebrate them, and then realize that even within our own traditions, we can support and encourage one another. Because we're all seeking to know God better and to understand you, and how you understand God helps me better understand and define my own understanding and belief of God.
What are your thoughts?
Our country is a many-colored coat, and each of us makes up one of those colors. I think we should take a page from Joseph, and we should prize that coat and not brag too much about it, lest someone should become jealous of it and try to take it away from us. And I think that the reason a many-colored coat was and a striped coat, because the Hebrew it could also mean striped or long sleeve. And in the show, it's all three. The reason that's hard is because dye was not color fast back then. It ran. So you had to take extreme care of this clothing. Otherwise, the stripes would all run and it would all turn out to be kind of a grayish mud color. So I think we should take care to make sure that our colors don't bleed onto one another. and end up muddling us all together so that we are indistinct and yucky. And that we should treasure the fact that we are together and that we are distinct and see how beautiful it is with us all together.
Thank you both very much. For those of you that came in halfway, I'm Michael Barron, the director of the show, the prescript director at Lyric Theater, and this is Pastor Kyle Anderson from Church of the Servant, a Methodist congregation here in town, and Dr. Abby Jacobson from Emanuel, Rabbi, Doctor, not Doctor. You could be.
I get a free doctorate when I've been a rabbi for 25 years. Does that count?
It does. Rabbi Abby Jacobson from Emanuel Synagogue. Thank you both very much for sharing your thoughts. And you will see us in about 7 to 10 minutes. Thank you so much.
Hi guys, thank you.